For this video, I am going to take my hand-drawn sketch and I am going to make selections of the areas inside the black outlines and use some of the brushes that I have in my Photoshop vernacular or my toolbox. And I am going to paint my hand-drawn sketch. I'll show you the finished product and then I will go through how I've created the separate layers and how I painted in this manner. It's pretty straightforward. So I will turn on all of the layers and just show you what the image looks like right now. I have made selections and you can see my big fat brush is kind of buzzing there. I'll just press V to get out of the brush mode and go into the move tool, and you can see that each one of the tools in the toolbar has its own key command. So if I wanted to navigate back to the brush, I don't necessarily need to click on the tool. I can use the B for brush or the V for the selection tool. So that's a really good couple of keystrokes to use when you're toggling back and forth. If you want to paint and then you want to move something like the paint strokes around, you toggle back and forth from B and V, or brush and selection tool or move tool, in order to get in and out of those tools. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out, Command minus, and I'm going to turn off some of the layers. And show you what I've got on layer 2, the paint layer. So if I turn off layer 0, and you can see I've done not the greatest job of naming my layers. Once I get into creating more and more and more layers, I find that the layer 0, layer 6, layer 5, layer 4 way of naming layers isn't really that helpful. If I were to close this image and then open it in a couple of weeks, I wouldn't really be able to tell what's on layer 3 or 4 because these icons are just so small and there is nothing, it looks like there's nothing on those layers. But really, some of the paint that's necessary for this illustration to look the way it does, there is some paint on those layers even though I can't tell what's going on. So first things first, I can double click on a layer name and name the layer eyes, teeth, mouth, why not? Layer 5, hair, and etc. as we go along. Okay, turn those back off. Layer 2, that colored layer, the color that I've decided to use, or the paint strokes and color that I've decided to use for layer 2, is visible here. So when I close off or turn off the original sketch, you can see what my paint layer consists of. That's layer 2. It's sitting there on its own layer, which means that I can move it, I can adjust it, I can add a hue and saturation or any one of the adjustment layers to adjust those colors if I want to. I keep my paint layers separate so I can adjust them, or I can maybe, if I wanted to add a filter to this layer, so maybe just the skin tone is going to have a filter attached to it. In case I need to erase something or add to it, it's separate. And I'm going to just add a hue and saturation and just show you, once I have everything turned back on, that hue and saturation layer, because it is right above layer 2, which I'm going to name skin, it is above the skin layer, but it's also above the color fill. So if I make a change in the properties of that hue and saturation layer, you can see that the background is changing as well, not just the skin. If I, and I showed you guys this last week, if I press Option between the two, that means that the background will stay the same. The hue and saturation adjustment layer is locked to the layer below, so it will only change the layer below. It will not change the color fill that's at the bottom of this hierarchy. One other thing, I have the skin layer and I have the ear, which is the same color. You can see I'm turning it off and on. If I wanted to, I could merge those two layers together. So now what I've done is I made a selection, and I'll turn all the layers off for a moment just so you can see what's happening here, or what I've done. Here is my drawing. To make selections within a well-defined outline is very easy. I can go in with my magic wand and click and shift click the areas that I want to make a selection of and then color. So let's say that that is what I would like to do. And you can see I've missed the ear altogether. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to grab a brush, and you can see I'm navigating to the toolbar, but I could press B for brush. I have my brush selected, which is a 2446 pixel brush. It looks like a paint daub. It was created by scanning in some paint that I've painted on some watercolor paper, and I brought it into Photoshop and made a selection, and I turned it into, through the drop down menu, Edit, Define Brush Preset. So that's how I made this brush. So I'm going to use the brush, and the brush has color burn as its mode, opacity at 100%, and it is orange. And I'm coloring where I've made the selection, and you can see that my edges of the selection are defined by the running ants. My brush, wherever I'm clicking and daubing that paint, because it's on color burn, it's adding darkness to each stroke wherever that new stroke is applied. If I change that to another mode like screen, you'll see that it's lightening up in areas. So we'll just leave it at that. Deselect, Command D, and you can see that I have my new layer. It's independent of the layer 0, which is my drawing. I've got layer 2, which is skin. And as well, this time I did miss the ear. If I turn on that ear, hello, even though the ear is separate, I can add it or merge it with one of the skin layers, or I can add all of the skin layers together. Let's see what they look like together. So that's fine. And I'll turn the sketch on again. So here we are. We'll leave her at that. So right now I've got only 3 layers. And if I press Command while I'm selecting layers that aren't in a row, I have now selected 1, 2, 3 layers. They're highlighted. If I go to the flyout menu and click on Merge Visible, I can merge those visible layers. Okay. If I have more than what I've selected visible, and I go to the flyout menu, and I'm going to select, go to the flyout menu, you can see that merge layers is not on. Sometimes when you have an adjustment layer working on your image, the merge visible or merge layers will be the one to use. In this case, merge visible when I turn all of the eyeballs off. Merge layers, if I select disparate or separate layers, and merge layers will be not grayed out. It is the option that I use. So just checking to see if ear, skin, and skin can be merged with merge layers or merge visible. So I can see that I have to turn the layers off that I don't want to merge. Okay. I don't necessarily need that hue and saturation layer anymore because you can see that it's not really being used, but I'm going to go to the flyout and I'm going to go to merge visible, and all of those layers, those paint layers, the 2 skin tones and the ear have been merged into one. I can pop it back down if I want to below the hue and saturation. I need to unlock it. So I'm pressing the Option key, and you can see the hue and saturation adjustment layer is being used on the skin layer. I'm going to name it skin. I'm going to turn the drawing back on. The drawing itself is on top of the skin paint layer. The drawing layer has multiply as its blend mode. If it was normal, you wouldn't be able to see the paint. If I drag the paint above the drawing layer, sometimes it doesn't really allow for good blending, and you can see where there are some trouble areas in my image where I've zoomed in. So what I like to do is just use multiply, and it still has a little bit of trouble in some areas, which I would have to go in and correct. But zooming out, if I were to go into the hair, hue and saturation, put the background in, I'm starting to see that maybe these pieces aren't exactly as bad as I first thought, because I do have that color fill behind everything. So this is just a start, just a beginning of creating my illustration, making selections in or on the drawing layer. So going in, and I'll turn these guys off for a moment, go back in, making selections with the magic wand, shift selecting to add to the selections, making a new layer and using some sort of paint strokes to paint or select a new color, paint on or in that selection on a new layer. Really straightforward. And then turning on the layers that I would like to view. Deselect to deselect, and that is a really, really simple intro into painting a hand-drawn sketch.